What's good, everyone? Matt here from PKT UK, from UK Nets fans, I should say, and I'm joined by Aidan McConaughey and Cammy Anderson for another episode of BKT UK, the British Brooklyn Nets podcast. Today is Monday, the 8th of November, and we're chatting about Nick Claxton going AWOL, Cam Thomas going bananas in the G League, Throwback City edition fever, as well as obviously recapping this past week's games, looking ahead to the week ahead, and much, much more. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram at UK Nets Fans, the pod itself on Twitter at BKT UK Pod, and check us out on YouTube where you can rewatch all of our old episodes back. With that out of the way, finally out of the way, sorry for the little bit of gargliness at the beginning. Nets news, and conspicuous by his absence, a man that's sort of started a few games this season, had a bit of a rocky start, and then has disappeared out with an illness, is all we know. Lads, should we start getting worried about Nick Claxton and his unavailability?
I think it depends on what you mean by worried. I think worried that he's out with a kind of mysterious illness. The Nets, being the Nets, haven't really released too much information. We can only all hope that Nick gets well soon. But I guess you could say it's worrying that we don't really know anything. We don't know when he's going to be back. As much as it is a private matter, we all want to see Nick do well. He's a fan favourite of the podcast. And Nets fans, really, he's a player who's one of our own. We drafted him and we'll want to see him on the court doing well. But just after last season where he kind of seemed to break it that little bit further, you're expecting that further step this season, yet this season's not really started for him. And we can only, as I say, hope that he's back fitting well soon and hopefully is able to carry on that growth that he showed last season. But I wouldn't say worried about not playing at the moment. Still quite early in the season. I think 3 or 4 weeks down the line, if he's still not played again, maybe we could say worried in that sense. But for me, I'm not too worried. Just hope he gets well soon.
Yeah, it's just been a really strange start to the season for Nick Claxton. In terms of the illness, I seem to remember Jarrett Allen going through a similar kind of length of time out with a undisclaimed illness, and you just think with his age group, it's probably going to be something like mono or glandular fever or something like that, where it does take a bit of time for guys in their early 20s to recover from these type of things, and he does kind of fit the age group. And it's one of those things, if it is something like that, it can only be treated with rest. And the fact that they're not coming out and saying it's like a sickness bug or which you'd probably get over a bit quicker. And they've obviously said that it's non-COVID related as well, which is a good thing. Just makes you think that they're just kind of being cautious with him and letting him rest up because there's no really much point in rushing him back. I think the fact that he's been sent out to Long Island as well is a good sign in my eyes. He's clearly in a condition where he can still play basketball and hopefully isn't too far away from making a return to Brooklyn. But it really needs to be something that when they do get him back, that he does kick on for the rest of the year, because I have to say he's definitely been probably the most disappointing player so far this year. I like Cammy. I expected him to come in and just be this force, potentially be a most improved player candidate as well. So I really hope he does come back and makes that leap, because I even go further back in the last couple of weeks. I think he's looked just not himself, and he was looking so good at points last year that you really do want him to come back and do that, especially when there's so many opportunities in that kind of top end of the court for a big guy like him to come in and play. Obviously Nash has started him the first couple of games as well, so he's got a lot of confidence in him. So when he does get that start again, it's just about him putting in the performances. So yeah, hopefully not too far away.
Yeah, it's just I always get a bit worried when they don't tell you what it is. And obviously you guys did an absolutely mint job of doing the pod last week while I was off swanning around the south of France with my family. But I don't know if it's something I've missed. I don't know if it's something that I've just not read up on. But I don't, like you say, you kind of left to guess what it is, which always makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. But, it is what it is. It's medical stuff at the end of the day. And if the start of this year has taught us anything, it's that medical stuff should be private, which is fine. But yeah, I think last season with Deandre Jordan still on the roster, I think there was a feeling of, this, could be holding Nick Claxton's development back, and where Nick Claxton should be getting more minutes instead of DJ because he's not great, and Claxton's got all this potential. But then when he did start, and now all those same people were giving him a hard time for kind of not really starting the season off brilliantly by Nets fans' lofty standards anyway. So it was a bit of a tricky one to kind of, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you don't play him enough, then it's a problem. If you play him too much, it's a problem. Then you factor in all of his perceived conditioning issues. Maybe this rest is good, and he didn't go to Summer League. Maybe he said that he can play through some stuff, and he ultimately couldn't. And we're still incredibly early in the season, so it's fine to rest him. I agree with you, Aidan, where him going up to Long Island is a good thing. If he was still real sick, they'd just get him to stay home. So it's nice that he's going to be playing basketball of some way, shape, or form. But yeah, in terms of being worried, I think same as you, Cammy, it's just like if this is still rumbling on in a couple of weeks, then you can sort of start getting worried. But yeah, another one to wait and see. But we do love an overreaction, especially when it comes to following your favorite sports team. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on this. So as Nick Claxton hopefully shows out in the blue of Long Island Nets, our Nets, the Brooklyn Nets, the first team, the A team, dropped some blue of their own in the shape of the throwback city jerseys, finally debuting with a new court. I am absolutely all over this. And I will say, I was very, very self-congratulatory as well, saying that when the leaks came out, I kind of spotted all the different calls to the throwbacks of the other jerseys as well. So I give myself a big pat on the back for that. But lads, this is an absolute killer of a jersey and a court, isn't it?
My opinion's changed anyway, but I'll let Aidan come in first.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion's changed ever so slightly as well. I mean, I was talking about it last week with Cammy when there was a lot of kind of drops coming out of the rumoured jerseys as they get released in the strange countries around the world. They just seem to pop up and photos appear on Twitter. And I wasn't that fussed for them originally. I did like them because, I mean, the throwback jersey last year was one of my favourite jerseys that I've seen the Nets in. And I just thought because it was relatively similar that I wouldn't be that fussed. So I've actually changed my opinion once I've seen the Nets play in them, and I do really like it. And I think with the court, it just, again, they've just knocked it out of the park. I think the colour scheme is really nice, and mixed with that herringbone court, you can't really go wrong with that type of court. Anything tends to look good on that. I'd like to see the Nets go back to that permanently for their regular court anyway. But yeah, it just seems to pop, and it does give that nostalgic vibe of the New Jersey history. I loved how Yes's coverage, they were showing throwback clips of the from New Jersey, and it still had obviously Ian Eagle commentating on it with a kind of squeakier voice, which was quite funny. But just the atmosphere in general for this, like for that release, it was one of the loudest Barclays Centre's crowds that I've ever heard on the TV, and that's obviously in regular season basketball. So I do think that the whole occasion of the throwbacks seemed to add to the atmosphere, and yeah, it's just been massively positive. I think everyone on Twitter's loving it. It's New Jersey fans that have came across to Brooklyn fans that maybe started here, international fans have all kind of came together and just really enjoyed something. So it's nice to get that togetherness in there. And we said we wouldn't mention him, but it was a real shame that we couldn't see Kyrie in that jersey on opening night, because just the New Jersey feel just screams Kyrie Irving. So it's a real shame, and I hope that situation's resolved soon. But all in all, yeah, a great marketing campaign, and you've got to take your hat off to the Nets marketing staff again.
Yeah, so it's grown on me. I'm not going to say I'm completely in love with it. I think having seen the court, and then especially the kind of off-court wear that comes with it, obviously the new Nike Dunks were released paying tribute to the kind of, the Nets, New Jersey Nets colours, but with the Brooklyn Nets badge within the New Jersey Nets badge. That was quite a mouthful to try and remember in the right order. It's like a lot of the stuff that they've done is really cool. Like Aidan says, that court, I'd love to see us go back to the grey. It's unique, it's different, but the herringbone was the kind of court that I got used to when I first got into watching the Nets. So I've got good kind of memories from that. So like Aidan says, it's brought a lot of fans together. There's an element of whether it's the colours, it's the court, it's just the style of the writing. It kind of brings generations of Nets fans together, which is really nice. I've smashed the marketing campaign with it. And yeah, I think maybe in a few weeks' time when I've seen a few more dubs in that jersey, I think I'll be all over it. But yeah, it's grown on me.
Our resident Jersey hater, Cammy there. First it was the Basquiat's. He's a hard man to please, but yeah, jury's still out. I think, yeah, if you listen to, the Pooches of the world and Keith from Talking Nets, who are, they were fans from the Jersey days, and it was just, it seems to have felt from those guys has been a long time coming and I think I read something on Twitter, the Pooch and Anthony Puccio, said the Nets almost forgot their roots. And by having this kind of real nod to the Jersey side of it, the New Jersey, as in the location, not the New Jersey, it's like it just really embraces that again. And just like you said, it kind of brings everyone together. I think obviously the type of the actual script of Nets across the front is the same as the tie-dye that they did last season. But I think with the navy blue, I think is a lot more wearable if you're, just chilling wearing it, and you're not a professional basketball player. If you're just wearing it out and about, I love like the net detail down the side with the stars from the ABA days. Just an absolute stone cold killer for me. I will be putting it on my Christmas list. Hopefully Santa knows I've been a good boy this year. You'll see me dropping that. But I think today's the 8th. I think it's released on the 15th. So I know I got an email from the Nets saying about pre-orders. Make sure you pick one up if you can. And, as of today, flights from the UK are touching down on American soil. So if you're lucky enough to go over there, make sure you pick one up. And make sure you go over wearing a UK Nets fans BK2K t-shirt as well. Let me know if you want to grab one. But yeah, we touched on a little bit of Long Island with Nick Claxton, but the main Long Island news from this week has got to be Summer League MVP, absolute walking bucket, Mr. Cam Thomas. He's getting nothing but garbage time minutes in the black and white, but you let him rock up to Long Island, pop him in the G League, 35 points in 35 minutes. Do you think, and shout out to Dayron Sharp as well, also with double-double, I think, 20 rebounds I think I saw? He went absolutely bananas. It might not have been about as much as that, but I haven't got the numbers in front of me. But, it's still incredibly early in the season, but do you think they're going to get called up to the big time, or what do you think?
I think eventually, sorry, I was waiting on you there. I think eventually we will see the pair of them get called up. Obviously, with them both kind of seen limited minutes in Brooklyn, it makes complete sense for them to get heavy minutes in Long Island. They're still young guys. They're players that will probably be part of the Nets for a few years, all going well, unless we do end up trading them. Cam Thomas getting 35 and 35 minutes is music to, I think, everyone's ears. It's kind of what you want to see. And the fact he's doing that so soon into his kind of like professional career against some pretty good competition. The G League, a lot of people would maybe understate it, but there's some really experienced guys in there. It's a place where a few guys have made their name and then obviously got their call-ups and not looked back. And for me, so long as Cam Thomas isn't a regular, and the same goes for Sharp and other guys in Long Island, I don't actually mind them playing in Long Island. It's like kind of in football, if a player's not playing for the first team, they might get loaned out, get more minutes elsewhere, and typically they'll come back a better player having been able to flourish elsewhere, get more minutes under their belt. And yeah, I can only see good things coming from this. Hopefully we do see Cam Thomas dropping buckets for the Brooklyn Nets soon, but so long as he keeps doing well for Long Island, I think it won't be long until we see him getting a few more minutes in the black and white.
Yeah, ironically, I think the Nets are still crying out for a player like Dayron Sharp to come into the team, but I can't see him getting minutes this year. I just want him to go stay in Long Island, as Cammy says, and just ball out and do his thing, and he may get that opportunity next year. But in terms of Cam Thomas, I just think the guy is built for the NBA. It's not just his standard of scoring, which is absolutely huge in this modern NBA, which is so scoring orientated. It's his mentality. He just seems to take what's in front of him every single time, and he just seems to just excel. And but I still see the Nets not rushing this one. There's probably an argument for Cam Thomas. Obviously, you see Javon Carter in there. I personally see him as probably the last guy in the rotation at the moment. Offensively, probably Cam comes in and dominates those minutes far better than Javon Carter could in any situation. But I definitely agree with Nash's decision to play him in Long Island, just because it does, as Cammy says, it teaches him the defensive intensity out with college basketball, because it's so different. I mean, I don't watch a lot of college basketball. From what I've seen, though, there really isn't that defensive intensity that you do get in the NBA and that you have to have. And obviously being in the G League is the next best thing to playing in the NBA, because you do get that crossover of young guys and experienced guys playing. So you do kind of have that different level of physicality that you would maybe only get out with the NBA and say by going overseas into Europe. So you do hope that Cam can come out of the G League being, say, a moderate defender or something like that. And I mean, if you can even get to a moderate level, he's got a huge, huge future in the NBA because of how good he is offensively. So, and people will probably not like me for saying this, but I mean, if it's not with the Nets, with his future in the NBA, he's a great trade chip to have as well, because when we don't have many picks, someone like Cam Thomas to chuck in as a sweetener is perfect. And I don't mean to break hearts of the Cam Thomas stands, because there's plenty of them. But in terms of the Nets as a business, it's nice to have. So I hope it is with the Nets, but it's nice to know that we've got a few young trade pieces to chuck into trades if it needs to happen.
Yeah, I think that was the masterstroke that we sort of said at the time from Sean Marks, where post James Harden trade, and you know the picks are looking a bit thin for the next few years. Picking so many people in this draft and keeping hold of them. Yeah, I think exactly as you say, he's probably with one eye on picking and flipping. But yeah, I've got the stats in front of me. They're on sharp 12 points, 13 rebounds. So not quite 20. I did get a bit carried away there. But yeah, Cam Thomas, 35 points on 10 of 23 shooting. So he's chucking them up. But, you know, they're going down 1 of 7 from 3, which isn't great. But still, he was 8 from 8 from the free throw line, which, again, I mean, when he has played in Summer League and stuff like that, he's just savvy, man. He can just get buckets, and he's not shy about chucking up the ball either, which I think if you're a scorer, it's a massive confidence thing anyway. So he looks like every level he's been at, he's just not been afraid of chucking it up. Yeah, which is great, and I don't think you can really teach confidence. So that's a really, really good thing to have. But that's it. That's all the Nets news that we kind of picked out for this past week. So let's take a little look through the games that have happened. So starting off for game 1 of the week, going back to Halloween, Sunday the 31st. 11 p.m. our time. The Nets beat the Pistons 117-91. So a nice, healthy win there. And Aiden, I think you're going to start with the beard returns. Talk to me about James Harden.
Yeah, you said at Halloween, and Scary Hours was back in action. So it was nice to see James Harden looking like himself again by picking up his first triple-double this season. I mean, he said it himself. He'll slowly get back to his high standard game by game. You'll see him develop a little bit at a time. So it was nice to see him come back and get a triple-double, which we obviously saw plenty of times last year, which is such a big part of his game because it just shows how he can appear on the stat sheet in so many different ways. But in terms of the triple-double itself, it wasn't like a groundbreaking triple-double. It was only 18 points, 10 rebounds, 12 assists, which, I mean, to the average person is fantastic, but to James Harden, it's just a regular triple-double. But, I mean, he only took 9 shots, which included 7 3-pointers, which personally is nice to see him taking so many threes. but there were still kind of glimpses of Harden not wanting to drive to the basket, assuming that's probably still to do with his hamstring. I think he is probably fully healed there, but he just doesn't have the confidence in it. Obviously, we're going through that horrible period in the Bucks series where he was playing on a strapped up grade 3 hamstring strain. So yeah, I'm not surprised he's still not got full confidence in that. He also had 5 turnovers in this one, but I'm putting a lot of that down to obviously the Nets will get in the groove of playing with the new unit. But yeah, it's just good to see him taking more threes. I mean, I said it earlier, but it's nice to see him just getting into that smooth rhythm of taking those step back threes, because he's shooting, like, he's 39% just now. And obviously that was a huge part of his game before he came to the Nets, is threes. So we didn't see too much of that last year. So it's nice to see him get back in and making up those scoring numbers, especially when Kyrie is out, and we do need some shooters around the arc. So yeah, a great performance from James, and yeah, that was the first of many for a really, really good week for him.
Cammy,
what did you make of the Pistons game?
So this is going to be short and sweet. Though I've realised it rhymes, but I was going to say this is going to be short and sweet. There weren't many tricks, but there were plenty of treats. This was
bars, fire,
absolute
bars.
A cruise control performance from the Nets, and after 3 quarters, we were leading by 22 points, and it was just one of those games where that is what we should be doing. That kind of sets the benchmark for games against these lesser teams. With all due respect to the Pistons and other teams at the bottom of the NBA, we should be beating these teams comfortably. And I think I noticed as well, a lot of guys stepped up. It wasn't quite the KD only show as had been the case in the games prior. This was a team performance, and as far as I'm concerned, long may this continue. We need to be kind of winning these games comfortably. There shouldn't be any cause for concern. And yeah, it was just a really nice Halloween win. I don't think you can really say much more than that, other than what you add to what Aidan's already said as well.
Yeah, it was nice. So you even sort of, the Halloween vibe, obviously it's way bigger in the US than it is over here, but like seeing people dressed up as James Harden with like the big fake beards and stuff, it was just like, felt like an absolute vibe. Absolutely agree with what you say, Cammy. Like this is, so I've got it in front of me. KD, instead of playing 35 minutes normally in a closer game, he was playing 27 minutes. James Harden obviously had a bit more with 29. But other than that, everyone's kind of playing 20, 25 minutes, which seems, like you said, it just shares it about a bit more. We want to be in a position where we're so far ahead going into the fourth, in the end of the third, start of the fourth quarter, that we can just ramp down KD and James Harden. But yeah, it was a nice performance, obviously against sort of not, I don't want to say lowly, because, you know, even the Pistons over the last couple of seasons especially have shown that they are capable of beating the Nets. But I wanted to just give a little bit of a shout out to a couple of notable people off the bench in Lamarcus Aldridge and Deandre Bembry. LMA continues his incredible season form, 16 points, 3 rebounds, including an offensive board, shooting 7 of 8 from the floor, which is 87.5% in maths terms, but that's in 21 minutes. You know, he's 36, and as a man that's just got a little bit older, it's very nice to see a man who's even older than me still putting up meaningful minutes in the NBA. My time could still be ahead of me. But he's averaging 11.6 points per game, 5 rebounds, with an effective field goal percentage of 0.643, which is really good. He's just been incredibly efficient and consistent, which is exactly what you want from a vet off the bench. KD afterwards was saying that he's just a calming force, which I thought was just a really good way to think about it, where when the starting unit's off the floor, you can just chuck it to the big guy in the post, and he's just going to slow things down. And he's just, he's still elite from that mid range, where he's got that he has got quite a weird shooting form. Like it's all in the wrists for LMA. I don't know if you guys have noticed that as well, but it works, and he's incredibly efficient. So really, really cool. Good to see him back to the basket. Been really impressed with Lamarcus Aldridge. But also Deandre Bembry, who I think is fast becoming a fan favorite. poured in his own 15 points, 7 boards, an assist, and 2 steals. So yeah, he did get in a bit of foul trouble. I think that's just kind of the nature of his plays. He's super. He's just everywhere. He's like a rash. But yeah, loving a bit of Bembry. So yeah, we just took care of business on Sunday against the Pistons, and then it was a couple of days off until Wednesday, where we played host to the Hawks and beat the Atlanta team 117-108. And Aiden, I'll start off with you, and it's all about them blue collar boys.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think I could love the Nets any more than I did, but this new storyline of the blue collar boys is the most lovable thing about the Nets at the moment in my eyes. And like, just to explain, if people don't know what it is, basically the blue collar boys, basically Joe Harris and Blake Griffin. Yeah, they've been referring to themselves like the blue collar boys after taking some charges in the last few games. Basically, kind of referring to their hard hat, kind of steel-toed boots, kind of type of mentality on the court, like bringing that onto the court. And recently, they've brought Patty Mills into the mix, who's just absolutely loving every minute of being like a member of this gang, because he took a couple of charges as well. And then there was a whole thing with Blake Griffin saying that they're having a meeting to process his membership and things. So they're having a lot of fun with it. And I really, in this one particularly, it was kind of where the storyline took off when Blake took a really hard charge, and he looked like he got it like where it hurts, like from a knee. But he just got up and he just put on his imaginary hard hat and his boots, and Patty Mills was just standing at the side just yelling at him, and it was just, yeah, so good to see. And yeah, it's just nice to see guys having a lot of fun with that kind of that hard-nosed mentality. Obviously, there's guys like Pat Bev and Draymond Green around the league who are just dicks about it. Like, there's no other way to put it. They're just horrible guys to other people, but they just have fun with it. And yeah, long live the blue collar boys. And you can now get your blue collar boys club t-shirts on the Teespring store, which Matt mocked up last night. So yeah, go out and get one of them because they're fantastic.
Yeah, applications are still open. It's not just Patty Mills and Kate. I think KD's even trying to get into it. I don't know if he qualifies as blue collar. He's a like a Lamborghini when it comes to being on the court. He's a finely tuned machine. But yeah, not only are talking of blue collar boys, Joe Harris had himself a game as well.
He did indeed. And just while we're talking about that t-shirt, if you want a t-shirt, you should be quick because there's going to be about 15 names on this t-shirt very quickly. And we're going to run out of room very quickly after the finale of the Raptors game. Matt had showed us the t-shirt with Joe and Blake's names on it, only for Patty Mills to then be accepted and for Matt to scramble and add another name to the t-shirt. So if you want one of the limited edition originals, be quick. Otherwise, you're going to have the whole team's names on it by the end of the season. But yeah, couldn't not talk about Joe Harris in this one. Joey Buckets was back at his best, and this is the kind of performance that we expect from Joe. 18 points, 2 steals, and 6 of 8 from free. That's the Joe Harris we've kind of come to know and love. And he's been said enough this season. He's averaging about 11 points, but I still can't help but think he could be doing a little more. Probably with his 3-point shooting ability, he could probably be getting up to about 15 if he can kind of find his mojo and start sinking the threes on a regular basis. Obviously, he's a very consistent 3-point shooter. We just maybe need to see him get 1 or 2 more. And yeah, as Aiden says, he's got that mentality, and it's kind of rejuvenated him in a little bit. As I say, he's still maybe got a way to go, but I think when the team are having fun, that can only lead to good things. When teams obviously aren't doing well, I think it makes it difficult for the players to maybe express themselves in the same way. They maybe get a bit scared to do something in case they turn it over and it causes something. Whereas this team, they're just all about fun. And yes, it's maybe not the kind of D-Lo and all that kind of team excitement dancing on the bench, but this is a different kind of fun. And yeah, long live the blue collar boys.
Yeah, I think yeah. It was almost like it. The more you think about it, the more of a serious point it becomes for Joe. I think because I think coming into the season, all he saw was him saying that he bottled it in the playoffs and all this kind of stuff. So the less distractions and the less fun you'll have in playing basketball, the more you concentrate on, making sure you hit your shots and all this kind of stuff. I think this is probably just going to take a load off him. So yeah, it's nice to see. And yeah, just super cool. He's let his hair grow out. He's literally letting his hair down. He's having a laugh with his mates, and it looks like it's translated onto the court. So yeah, really, really good stuff. But talking of good stuff, this is it. I'm putting my colours to the mast. This is officially the marking of MVP watch for Kevin Durant this season. You heard the chants at the Clees or the Clays, however you want to pronounce it, for MVP for KD. But it's such a nice problem to have, but it's so hard to talk about KD now because you just run out of adjectives. Another 32-point performance, as well as 7 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, a block, and 13 from 20 from the floor. Like we spoke about it before about KD having to come in and bail out the Nets, and is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? But I think looking back on it, he's just been expected to be the best player on the team for every team he's ever played for. And I include the Warriors in that. But so I think it's just par for the course for him. I think that is just what he does. And he takes that in his stride and he understands that him being Kevin Durant means he's got to do that. So I'm not too worried about it. He's playing loads of minutes. He's looking fine. I'm not scared anymore when he hits the deck, which I was last season. So it feels like he's playing with a ton of confidence and he's back to his best. So I think we might check in on this and revisit on this throughout the season. But I think he's leading the NBA now in points per game as well. So yeah, Kevin Durant. What more can you say about the guy? He's bringing the stars to Barclays because you had Jay-Z in the house and David Beckham, which, doesn't get much more A-list than these two guys. So another great performance from the Hawks game. And then it was back to the Pistons. So on Friday the 5th, another day's rest and then back at it. But a slightly closer game than we were expecting. The Nets still took it, though, 96-90 against the Pistons. Cammy, what you got? What did you make on this one?
So I can basically throw out what I said about the previous Pistons game because this was the complete opposite. Just days on from absolutely obliterating them. This one didn't quite go in the same fashion. The second quarter was some rather forgettable basketball for both teams with a combined 27 points. We had quite a big third quarter. We kind of rallied, rebounded from quite a poor start. But yeah, it was just one of those. When we went ahead in the third quarter, I think it was 14, 15 points or something like that. We really should have just seen that out, expanded on that lead, and then we didn't. And it was a lot closer than it had to be. And whether that was just, it was the third game of the week, the guys were maybe getting a little bit tired, or I really don't know what you could put it down to. It is worrying in a sense that we've allowed this to happen just days after. Of course, every game of basketball is different. You're never going to have the same game twice. But it's one of those weird things that I can't quite get my head around. How can you absolutely batter a team and beat them by about 30 points to then only just kind of scrape past them? Did we take the foot off the gas too early when we went up? Were the Pistons just better prepared and realised after last time that we did just take the foot off the gas and they probably could have given it a go and they did. And yeah, very nearly came away with a win. And it would have been embarrassing had we dropped it, having led quite heavily after, like I say, the kind of first and second quarters being a bit poor by net standards. But we got the win in the end, so I guess that's all that's important.
Yeah, I'm glad you gave KD some love there, Matt, because it seems to be that we do sometimes miss him out because we're now expecting him to get like 30 points a game.
Absolutely.
But he obviously went off in this one. But I'm going to talk about Lamarcus Aldridge because, to put it simply, if Lamarcus Aldridge didn't return to the Nets this year, we would have lost this game. And purely because of his scoring off the bench was the only thing that kept us going on the minutes that Kevin Durant and James Harden weren't on the court. Because, yeah, as Cammy said, it was a really kind of poor night for the Nets, and it was just really poor shooting-wise. And Lamarcus Aldridge, he was just the difference maker in those minutes. I mean, he was 16 points, 5 rebounds, 6 of 9 from the field, which is mainly all long range, kind of long mid range shots. And you mentioned his percentages earlier. I saw Matt Brooks tweeted one to say that I think it was at the time of this game that he was 84% from the long to mid range shots, which is probably historic, even like over that stretch of games, because that's just absolutely incredible. And it was getting to a point when he does take those shots that you're shocked when he misses, almost like Kevin Durant. But in this one particularly, he was just absolutely automatic. It seems like for the Nets that when we have bad shooting nights, it is a bit contagious, but he's always in a zone of his own, and he's just making those shots when he gets some. As you said earlier, he just kind of takes the shots and he just relaxes and he makes them. So I've just been so happy with Lamarcus Aldridge since he's been back with the team. I think it's a fantastic storyline for him to come back. He's not just it's not like a fairy tale story for him coming back and just being a part of the team after obviously having to retire last year. This guy's a serious part for us, a player for us, and he's so important and will be so important going forward.
Absolutely. The one thing I want to sort of what you're saying about kind of why it's so close and stuff compared to the game that was like literally the same week. I think they were a bit more physical. It felt like a bit more of a boxing match than a basketball match at times. Obviously going in with Blake Griffin getting into a teeny tiny little dust up, and I'm only really sort of picking this out on because we've had a lot of games this week to recap, so I just thought I'd sort of focus on something similar. But Blake Griffin's general toughness and just sort of ruggedness. Obviously, we spoke a bit about his blue collar credentials, but he had 13 points and 5 rebounds in this game, 2 assists. Still taking tons of blocks. And then some chump called Isaiah Stewart. They've been playing sort of pretty rugged, pretty rough, which I've noticed a lot more this season. Obviously, a lot's been said about the rules changes and all this kind of stuff and the refs letting people play a little bit more physical. But it did lead to this, which had kind of been brewing all game. But it looked to me like this Stewart fella was almost trying to give Blake the weights going for a rebound. Blake sort of kind of rolled him and flipped him, and this guy fell, but he kind of hooked Blake's arm and they both fell, and then he just kind of stood over him to not let him up. Theo in the chat has come through played an absolute blinder, and he said the word you're looking for is shithousery. And yes, you're absolutely right, Theo. But yeah, it was just annoying and chippy, but it's just one of those. I think that the Pistons were trying to get back to not their. They've got obviously the bad boy reputation, or they did have 40 years ago or whatever. But it was just that was one of the main differences I saw. But again, it was nice to see that, like you say, with Lamarcus Aldridge's contribution and another Nets team, another season would have lost this game, but thankfully we stuck in it, which kind of brings us on to our final game of the week to recap, which was Sunday's UK friendly tip time, 8:30, which started off as a close game, but the Nets sort of pulled away. Nets winning 116-103 against the Raptors. Cammy, do you want to keep on with the Blake Griffin love?
I do indeed. Blake's effort is always top notch, but it just seemed a bit different in this one. He's a man on form, 14 points and 11 rebounds in this one. Sank 4 threes, which I found pretty interesting. I think prior to this one, he'd only scored 1 free all season. So the fact he managed to sink 4, and I think it was 4 from 6 as well. So it wasn't like he'd just started launching them tons and tons. He was very, very clinical, and if he can add that to his game consistently, that's another dangerous weapon to have in our arsenal and only makes the Nets even scarier for teams to come up against. It was one of those things that we've seen in stretches from Blake last season. We knew he was capable of it, but for him to score 4, I'd take that all day long. It's mental to think that people were saying he was washed, he was done, he wasn't any use anymore. He's completely blown all those kind of thoughts about him and how the kind of state of his career now out the water since he came to us. He's just kind of carried on that renaissance, to be all fancy. Couldn't get the word out of my mouth. In Brooklyn, and it's just wonderful to see. And you can't not love this guy. His lunge to recover possession after running half the court was mightily impressive. A lot of guys would have probably just given up. Something we didn't quite touch on was James Harden's kind of just like the kind of moment where the controller dies and the other one just kind of runs through. I mean, I've still no idea what he thought was going on there, but like just in the space of a few days, you've seen that where he's all right, I'll just leave the ball, it'll be all right. To Blake going, no, you're not getting this. I'm legging it, and I've got to throw myself the length of myself to ensure you're not getting it. And that's what we've said it, and we'll continue to say. You need someone like that in the team. And yeah, he's, like you said, Matt, showed off his blue collar credentials. That is the epitome of a blue collar worker, in my opinion. Hard work and just willing to do everything to get the job done.
Yeah, I think everyone was kind of good in this game. Obviously, that's a fantastic result against the Raptors. I mean, that's a game that, again, we said about the Pistons game before, but we probably would have lost it last year just because they're the type of team that are so defensively good that we just seem to can't get the numbers against them. And I've been hugely impressed with Steve Nash, and especially in this game. And I think he's not been talked about enough. I think he's taken a huge leap in his standards of coaching this year. And it's one of those things you can talk about the players all day because it's the attractive side of the game. But Steve Nash is obviously there controlling everything. And the thing I think I've been most impressed with Steve Nash is just how well he learns from his mistakes. And I think from the Kenny Atkinson era, we saw so many mistakes happening. They never seemed to end right up until Kenny leaving. And it was almost like he was so stubborn that he just didn't want to see the changes be made. And I just see Nash as such a progressive coach that he's quite happy to see where he's went wrong, and then he makes the changes. And in this game, there was kind of two things in particular that I noticed that he did. The first of all was from previous games, we seem to always come out in the second quarter with the second unit and have like such poor scoring numbers because they usually play, KD usually gets the full the first quarter and Harden usually plays, say, 10 minutes, 11 minutes. And Harris usually plays about kind of 10 minutes as well. So what he did was he pulled Joe Harris after the 5th minute in the first, and then he started him with the second unit. And it just worked so much better that we had someone like Joe Harris in there with the second unit who can score. And it's not just him actually scoring, because I think he only got like 5 points or something in the second. But it's taken that attention off Lamarcus Aldridge, who at the moment is getting like 3 guys surrounding him when that unit's on just because he doesn't have the scoring around him. So that was really, really cool to see. And then, again, just kind of a similar issue. We've been starting the fourth quarters, and Elliot from Discord spotted it in this one, that when we do play KD and Harden so many minutes in the third, that we go into the fourth, and that's usually when we kind of see teams make a run against us. So he pulled Harden again with, I think, 3 or 4 minutes to go, and then started him in the fourth, which just kind of gave us that composure that we really needed, especially against a Raptors team who were starting to look a bit better. So, and then obviously Harden went absolutely crazy in the fourth and scoring from all over the shop. So yeah, just nice to give Nash some plaudits, and yeah, hats off to him for seeing these issues and fixing them quickly.
Nice. Yeah, I think when you're critical of someone, your praise needs to be as loud, doesn't it? And I think you're right, where Nash got a lot of flack for especially his rotations and the lack of timeouts and stuff like that. So I think you're right to heap praise where it's due. And yeah, I think the proof's in the record. You can see like we're doing a lot better. We're managing games better, and yeah, that test of, it's the old I'm going to bed test, isn't it, that we always say about being up late and in the Discord and tweeting along and all that kind of stuff. And when the game's not really going to plan, and it's, you're staring down the barrel of 2:30 a.m, you're like, I might just knock this on the head. But now, we're not letting these teams get away anymore. We seem to be having that kind of 7 to 8 to 9 point buffer all the time, and the runs are never 2 run. You don't see as many 15-point runs from teams anymore against us. So it's nice to see that that game management really coming through. And, he's a second-year coach at the end of the day. So, very, very, very interesting. Obviously, if you watched the Yes broadcast for this Raptors game, they did mention at length about how this, playing in Canada, and Steve Nash is Canadian, and this is the first time he's coached in Canada. So they really did drum that home. But I tell you one thing that can stay in Canada, and that's the Raptors halftime entertainment and the Raptors entertainment in general. I tweeted during the time and I was like, if there's worse in arena entertainment, now I do not want to see it. So they had some enthusiastic lady hula hooping at halftime. And bear in mind, the Nets have got Busta Rhymes doing like full things. Like we got drum lines and all this kind of stuff. A lady with hula hoops full of LEDs and a bunch of people playing pretend blindfold limbo. And that was just something that really, really wound me up. And I think it was getting, even though it was a UK friendly tip off time, it was still too late to be putting up with that rubbish. But talking about putting up with rubbish, this is, the Homer section of the podcast, but how many times did James Harden get fouled and not get called in this Raptors game? It was absolutely ridiculous. There was once where Gary Trent Jr. nigh on rugby tackled James Harden, and I think even Trent Jr. was expecting a call and he didn't get it, and it was crazy. But I'll before I work myself up into a lather, I think I'll leave that one there. But yeah, we got to get the end of the day. We got the W. And I think, is that the first clean sweep of the week of the season? Yeah. I think it probably is. Well, yeah, we're only in week 2 or 3. So, absolutely brilliant. Really, really good stuff. So long may this, and I think we're on a 5-game win streak taken over from the Pacers game last week. So yeah, it's nice weather in Nets world at the moment. So long may it continue. But we will be tested, however. So as I say, we're recorded on Monday night. It is currently 5 to 11 p.m. And at 1 a.m. coming up, we are going to Chicago to play a very, very good Bulls team with a lot of hype. Obviously, it's a completely different Bulls team to what we saw last season with the additions that they've made over there. Then we also traveled to Orlando to face the Magic on Wednesday, the Pelicans in New Orleans on Friday, before heading to KD's old stomping ground, OKC, to play the Thunder on Sunday. So looking ahead on those 4, I'll come to you first, Cammy. Predictions. What are you most looking forward to in these games?
I'm looking forward to a week full of dubs again.
Yes,
may as well just get out there immediately. I mean, the Bulls game, it's maybe a tough start to the week, especially considering the games that follow. All the other teams are doing very, very badly, especially the Pelicans, who've won a whole 1 game. And these are all teams, the Magic, the Pelicans, and the Thunder. We should be doing to them what we've done against the Pistons first time round, absolutely obliterating them and extending that win streak to 9 games. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't. This is maybe the week we start resting guys in between games. I don't know, but given the way we're playing, I hope that's not the case. I'd like to see us just continue, try and just keep the winning run going. Why try and change something that's not broken? The Bulls game will be really interesting. Like you say, they've made a lot of changes. This isn't the Bulls from last season or the season before. They've got a really stacked and interesting roster with Levine, DeRozan, Caruso, Vucevic. It's a decent team. So it'll be quite a good test for this Nets team. Vucevic is also someone who would regularly dominate against us for when he was playing for the Magic. So it'll be interesting to see how we've adapted to that. Obviously, DeRozan will be up against Aldridge, 2 guys that know each other very well from their time in San Antonio. So for a bit of luck, LMA can maybe help us out with DeRozan's tendencies and bits like that. And then, it's just going to be an interesting one. Didn't even mention, I can't remember if I even mentioned Lonzo Ball or if I didn't mention Zach LaVine. But there's a lot of talent in this Bulls team, and I think it's going to be quite a good game. But hopefully, like I say, it's going to be a week full of dubs for this Nets team.
Yeah, I totally agree. A week full of dubs as well. I think it's getting to that stage in the road trip now where, like, obviously players are kind of missing their own bed and missing their families and whatnot. So it's not easy going away, and I think we kind of take that for granted when we're just watching games every so often, that these players are having to live in hotels and be uncomfortable for a couple of days with traveling and planes and buses and things. So, but I still expect the Nets to come in. I see this as quite a kind week still. I don't see it as too many issues there. I think, obviously, as Cammy said, that Bulls game is going to be probably the hardest one of the week. They started the season really, really well, obviously, with their new additions, but they've kind of tailed off a bit over the last few games. So I do expect to see the Nets win this one. And yeah, I totally agree. I think when you've got someone like Vucevic, they just always seem to dominate against the Nets, and DeRozan and Levine have done it as well in the past, where they've just seemed to be scoring it well. But we've not mentioned it yet, but the Nets are top 10 in defense at the moment, so that's massive. And the fact that we're kind of holding a lot of teams to under 100 points, hopefully that's another one of these occasions where we do stop their scorers and we can hopefully get the win there. In terms of the other three, Magic, Pels, Thunder, they shouldn't be causing us trouble, and I'd be really disappointed if we lose any of those three. And again, that's just the standards that we've got now, and if we can come away with 8 games on the road trip, winning with eight wins, like, that's fantastic, and we should be pretty near the top of the Eastern Conference if that happens. So yeah, I'll match Cammy and say 4 wins.
Nice. Yeah, I've just been looking up because obviously with my week of absolute sort of not really paying attention to basketball, I've just been having a quick look back at who the Bulls have been playing, because obviously they did get off to a great start, but that was against the Cavs twice, the Pelicans twice, the Grizzlies, the Pistons twice, the Raptors, the Knicks, the Jazz, and the Celtics, and they've just been beaten twice by the Sixers. So they've had a good start to the season against some absolute garbage teams, to be fair. So, you know, their last 2 games, they've had a back-to-back against the Sixers, and they've lost both games. And before that, they beat the Celtics, but who's not going to beat the Celtics? But yeah, it's one of those, I think I want to be with you guys and say 4 straight, but just for the sake of being a contrarian, I'm going to say we drop 1, and I got to say it's going to be against the Bulls. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and just strictly because they got the Vucevic factor. He's a good old player against us, and where we don't have, you know, the best rim protection. Although, like you say, our defense has been incredibly good this season so far. Just for a point of difference, I'm going to say we're going to go 3-1, and if we get 4 wins, then I've won really as a Nets fan anyway. So we'll put those on the pick'em, of which Aiden is currently winning. Not only is he undefeated in our UK Nets fans fantasy basketball league, he's also the winning on the pick'em as well. So it's a good time to be Aiden. And that's it for the looking ahead. So it's going to be very, very exciting. Another jam-packed week. And then we're going to wrap up with some listener questions. So thank you very much for everyone who's been hitting us up with their listener questions. We're going to start off with Theo, who has made an appearance in the chat. Thank you very much, Theo. You may know Theo, friend of the pod, from Met the Criteria podcast. Very interesting question. He said, what Nets narrative has surprised you the most after the first 10 games? Is it Harden's egregious lack of fouls? Is it Claxton going on AWOL? What is it? Gents, I'm gonna go to you first because I'm freestyling this a little bit.
I'll go first for this one. I'd say for me it's Lamarcus Aldridge's return. I mean, I said he was going to be a big impact player, but to come in and look like he's in his 20s again with the numbers that he's putting up, I know obviously his percentages are bound to tail off at some point. If they don't, then he's an all-star in my eyes. But yeah, I said that he was going to be the 3rd most important guy in the postseason, and he's certainly looking like that currently in the regular season. So yeah, I'll say Lamarcus Aldridge's mammoth return after retiring.
Mine's is a bit more negative, and that's the disappointing season of Paul Millsap. Now, before the season began, I'd kind of tipped Paul Millsap to be this year's Jeff Green, but it really hasn't been that at all. He's not produced anywhere near the level of Jeff Green. Hasn't really produced at all whatsoever. 3.2 points, 3.4 rebounds and assists a game. And to be fair, he's not getting as many minutes as I think any of us expected. I think we were kind of expecting him to slot into that Jeff Green, probably getting 20, 25 minutes a night. But it's been very rare that I don't even know if he has had that many minutes in a game this season so far. It's just, it's surprised me a little bit. I had kind of high hopes for him after the Jeff Green kind of experiment, if you like. But yeah, so far it's not been Paul Millsap. It's been Paul kind of, but yeah, just meh.
Millsap.
Paul Millsap. Paul Millsap. Yeah, having a look at his minutes, and it's really strange. They really fluctuate. He'll play 5 minutes one game, then 12 minutes the next, and then sit against the Pistons. 13 minutes here, 9 minutes there, then 16 minutes, then 5 minutes. So he's a bit all over the shop. So he's averaging 10.8 minutes a game. Like you say, 3 points, 3.2 points. But yeah, he's just not even really chucking up the shots either. Like the game high for shots attempted was against the Sixers, where he shot 6 times. So, I don't know what he is yet, if you know what I mean. It's just like you said, we were expecting him to be Jeff Green. You want him to be that kind of Blake Griffin style, rugged, rough, and rebounding, all that kind of stuff. But he's, like you say, he's just kind of a bit. I don't really have an opinion of him yet, which is probably a bad thing. Nets narratives is a tricky one. I wish I'd given this more time thinking, because it's a really, really good question. But I will just go back to James Harden. His slow start has been annoying. Obviously, it's been this kind of rule change which has come round, which I've given up trying to defend now, because I think anyone who's not a Nets fan literally doesn't care about James Harden not getting foul calls. But if you do watch the Nets games, Ryan Ruocco said it best on the call against the Raptors in that Raptors game, where he was like, ton of contact, but it's not called because nothing is a foul on a James Harden drive anymore. But yeah, so that's been really, really strange. But he's still, he's starting to get there. So give it another 10 games, and I've got no doubt in my mind that he's going to get back to being the James Harden we're used to. He'll find a way. I mean, he found a way to do incredibly well in basketball, and in a unique fashion that other players don't do, in terms of contorting his body and the step backs and all these hezzy moves that he's got that no one else can do. He'll find a way. He'll adapt. He's a basketball genius, just like KD is, and just like Kyrie Irving is. But he'll adapt and he'll be fine. So I don't think it's time to panic just yet. But it is a very interesting thing to be thinking about. So yeah, thank you very much for your question, Theo. Moving on to another regular listener, regular contributor to these questions. So thank you very much, Elliot from Hoopin' and Luton. What player, apart from KD and Harden, being injured would have the most detrimental effect to the team? Who wants to tackle that one first?
I'll tackle it first. So, I mean, this is going to sound like such a boring answer, but I think you could genuinely make a case for anyone in this team. It has been a real team this season. A lot of guys have contributed, but if I'm going to have a gun to my head and have to say one person, I'm going to say Blake Griffin. And I'm not just saying that because Elliot is the biggest Blake Griffin fanboy. He's his favourite. It's just that grit and determination. Like I said earlier, everyone wants that in the team. And I'm going to make such a bizarre comparison, and you can throw me off the podcast for making this, but Blake Griffin is almost like this team's Phil Pinson. Now, you're going to go, how on earth is that comparable? Because one guy dances and never got in the court. The other guy gets in the court and doesn't dance. But hear me out. So the comparison comes in that Blake Griffin's almost a kind of hype man, and that he's the head of the blue-collar boys, kind of like he's keeping things fun, just like Phil Pinson was the man doing his dancing on the side when he couldn't get on the court to save himself. So, yeah, the most bizarre comparison that I don't think anyone expected to hear this year. But yeah, I think you kind of need Blake Griffin there. He's the one that's kind of keeping the spirits high, and yeah, as I say, the grit and determination are massive factors in why we've done so well.
No, I'll let you have that. That is you had me going then for a sec, but you've convinced me now. I like that. I like that comparison a lot. Nice.
I like that. It's almost like you're calling Blake Griffin the artistic director of the Blue Collar Boys. There. But yeah, no, I've not went for Blake Griffin, but yeah, he is very important. I thought I'd go for someone a bit different just because I've been talking about Lamarcus Aldridge. But in terms of the question as to who I think would be most impacted by if someone got injured, I've got to go for Bruce Brown. And I think it's no coincidence, obviously, that our record has been significantly better since he's rejoined the starters. And even going back to last year, remember when he had a bit of time out, it was huge not having him there. He's just that kind of, again, a guy that does the dirty work. And obviously that top 10 defense, that a lot of that is down to Bruce Brown, because he does come in and he guards their best guard basically on every defensive possession. So I think he's really, really important. And at this point in time, I can't think who I would put in that starting lineup to replace him. And I can think of guys that could replace potentially Blake Griffin and Joe Harris probably quicker than I'd say Bruce Brown, just because of the type of job he does. So yeah, really impressed with what he's done this year. And yeah, God hope he doesn't go down.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. There was a stat that was doing the rounds on Twitter about the difference between the Nets' defensive rating when Bruce Brown is on the floor versus when he's off the floor. And it was ridiculous. It was something like when Bruce Brown plays, the Nets are a top 3 defense or a top 5 defense or something, or what it may be. But yeah, he's incredibly important to this team. And that was one of my answers that I had, but I had a feeling you guys might agree with me on that one. So I'm going to say Patty Mills. And obviously he felt like he's not cooled off this week, but obviously he came out the blocks absolutely on fire to start the season. So by those very, very high standards, he's come down a bit from that. But I think he's just going to be sort of towards your point, Cammy, where you need those energizers off the bench, like your Theo Pinsons and your Bruce Browns. You need people just to have those moments in the game that give the crowd energy, and that then feeds back into the team and all that kind of stuff. So I think Patty Mills, running around screens and doing everything and shooting those dagger threes from seemingly everywhere, I think that's going to be incredibly important as the season rolls on and we start getting a bit more into the season where you might get a little bit more rust and a bit more sort of compounding of the wear and tear of the regular season. I think he's going to be incredibly important. And that guard depth, especially, we said we haven't seen much from Paul Millsap. There was the jury's still out for me on Javon Carter as well. So you've not seen a great deal from him, sort of positively or negatively. Again, it's just one of those where I just don't really have an opinion on him yet. Me watching basketball isn't sophisticated enough to have an opinion on the really nuanced stuff. But in terms of the guard rotation, I think Patty Mills is obviously incredibly talented and valuable in that set of players. So if he were to go down, I think, the Nets would struggle a lot, especially in that second unit. But yeah, Elliot, mate, I hope those are suitable enough questions. Answers to your questions, sorry. But that's it. That's all we've got time for. We've just ticked over the hour. So that's plenty of time hearing from us three. So all that's left to say is thank you to Aidan and Cammy, as ever. And thanks to you guys for listening and watching along with us on YouTube and Twitter and Twitch and all that good stuff. If you like what we do, then the best way you can help us is to like, rate, review the podcast, subscribe to us on YouTube. We are closing in on 100 subs, which is very, very exciting. But yeah, share the episode on social media. Any help we can get to grow our audience is very much greatly appreciated. You can also support us. We've alluded to it a couple of times, but you can support us as well by buying some merch. Get your Blue Collar Boys Club t-shirts, as well as some other cool stuff on there. And you'll find a link to our Teespring store in our Twitter bio. But that's it. We'll see you next week for another episode. Take it easy. Thanks.